gonna tell you guys a quick little story here of how a subscriber of mine actually got scammed by a local company if you stick around for a few minutes.
CUB 350, baby.
Welcome back, Stupid Fast Nation. How are you guys doing today? Got a subscriber's Yamaha Banshee 350 here. I don't normally do a lot of outsourcing work for people. This happened to be a friend of a friend, and I was like, yeah, I'll do the Banshee stuff because I love my Yamaha Banshees, as you guys already know. And he asked me what we could do to hook him up with a kind of a trail Banshee, but not stock. He wanted something that has, you know, a good step up in power, but wasn't doing like crazy drag racing or crazy hill climbs or anything like that. But wanted a good conversation piece and a good thing to take out on the trails and really go hammer on this thing if you wanted to. I ordered the CUB 350 kit from BP Racing ATV, and I'll tell you, I didn't get a chance to look at it yet, but I've heard a lot of good things about this kit overall. So I thought we could give it a shot. We'll take a look at the ports. The bore sizing, I think, is still stock. So it's a stock stroke, stock bore, but it has some crazy porting design. And so it really opens up the flow of a stock bore, stock stroke bottom end. So I think that's gonna be a great kit to use overall. Let's get everything over to the workbench, get it all laid out. We're gonna go ahead and blast through this thing, get it into the bike, get her running, get her ripping. Let's check it out. Let's see how the CUB 350 does, guys. All right, now, before we get started with the story on how my subscriber got ripped off on this Banshee, I want to go over a couple things with this kit real fast. I actually took the liberty of putting the bottom end together because you guys have seen me do that a bunch of times on the channel, and I don't want to be over repetitive about stuff. So I put the bottom end together. I did notice there was a hole in the case, so I had to take some time and clean the aluminum up real good. This was actually after I put the cases together, and so I welded that with the cases together. You have to be very careful when doing that because you don't want to overheat the aluminum and kill any of the seals that are already in the engine. But the cool thing about aluminum is it cools down really fast. So I did go ahead and weld that. I also welded the pins on the crank, so that way when this baby's revving out 10, 11,000 RPM, we don't have any problem with the crank coming untrued because it is trued from the factory. There's also a few other things in this kit that you don't get directions on. One of them is the stud extenders that go on the outer studs of the actual case here for the cylinders, because it is now going to be a mono cylinder, in which case both cylinders are combined into one single dual cylinder versus the OEM, which is two separate cylinders. This kit also comes with a couple extra dowel pins. My guess is, I don't remember how many pins come from the factory, but this one only had 2 in the front, so I had to add the 2 in the back. And also, don't forget, all of your brand new cylinders come with these little plugs that go in the bottom of the cylinders. I have heard so many stories about guys forgetting these plugs in the bottom of the cylinders, and then that's an actual coolant jacket, and that's for the casting when they do these brand new. You have to plug those so the coolant doesn't come spraying out of the bottom of this. I have heard of guys running them without them and not having any leaks, or then later on developing leaks. I highly recommend you seal these with some Teflon tape, or like a silicone sealant that's meant for high temp coolant and stuff like that, or even 3-Bond, the stuff, Honda Bond 4, the stuff I'm using for the cases here, the liquid gasket. But I'm gonna use Teflon tape because that's what I've used since the beginning of time when I've started building Banshees. So with that being said, I'm gonna put some of this together, and then I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about how this guy got ripped off and how this Banshee actually came to me. So basically what happened was, there's a company, and I don't want to tell you guys where it is because I don't want to get sued for defamation of character, but what I can tell you is it's fairly local to me. I have heard of the company, and I have heard of people taking their stuff over to this company. So we'll call this company No Name. So this No Name company gets this Banshee and has some sort of lackey, if you will, that works for the main guy. And so this lackey tears this Banshee apart. The owner of the Banshee goes and buys a bunch of parts for this Banshee, an extended swing arm. They thought it was crooked, which it turned out that the post going across the swing arm was crooked. I'll show you guys a clip of that. But the actual swing arm itself was not crooked. With that being said, the company that put this Banshee to where it is in the state that it's in is not the people that built the swing arm. And so that's really important here, right? They have nothing to do with the swing arm. The owner of the Banshee bought this swing arm, brought it in for this company to install with a brand new axle, brand new hub assembly. It's not like all billet aluminum. It's like your standard eBay swing arm, axle, carrier, stuff like that. So it's bound to have imperfections like that centerpiece being off. What happened was he takes his Banshee over, takes a bunch of parts over to this guy and his company, and the lackey tears this thing apart. Now, I'm telling you the story based on how I know it. Okay, there we go. So basically, the owner of this Banshee takes it over to this company, takes a bunch of brand new parts over for the company to install. The company that's working on the Banshee says, oh, you know, your CDI, your coil, and your flywheel are bad, and we have to replace those. So this guy doesn't know a whole lot about these quads. He basically rolls over and he's like, yeah, I'll pay for whatever I got to pay for. And so then this company starts talking him into, well, why don't you do like a 4 mil kit, and we'll do like a 421, and you know, it'll be this big bad mamma jamma basically. And so the guy, I guess the guy was gonna do it, and then he come to find out he's actually getting ripped off. The flywheel is Chinese on it and is used. It was supposed to have a brand new Yamaha flywheel on this thing. It had a used, I'll show you guys some clips. I have it right here in the pile. The flywheel was Chinese. It was like a Vito's, but it was polished. It did have a brand new CDI and coil, and they didn't even give him his old CDI and coil back, which was a red flag for me, because I was like, why wouldn't they give him his old stuff back? You can't just keep people's stuff for no reason. So they don't give him his stuff back. It is brand new OEM CDI and coil. And then they charge him $3,800 for the CDI, the coil, and then basically putting the swing arm, the axle in. But they didn't charge him for the swing arm and axle because he brought that stuff separate. So they charged him for the labor, and then also the labor of tearing the motor out and tearing it down, which you guys that build Banshees would know these things come apart pretty easily. They're not that hard. So $3,800. Now I know a CDI and a coil is about $600, $500 to $600 for the CDI, and you got what, like $200 and some for a coil, and then they charge them another $250 for an eBay wiring harness, which is actually like 50 or 75 bucks. So we got what, $500 for the CDI, we'll call it $250 for the coil, $250 for the harness. That's $1,000. So $3,800 minus $1,000 is $2,800. So they charged him $2,800 to not even replace his flywheel that they then threw the old one out, because when he asked for it back, they were like, oh, we threw it out. And then on top of that, all they did was install the swing arm and tear the motor out. So they charged him $2,800 to tear the motor out, take it apart, and then put a different swing arm on. I was like, dude, that's ridiculous. I felt so bad for the guy. I was like, man, just let me take it off your hands and I'll put it together for you. I'll get you souped up on an Alpha Cub 350. Hell of a lot cheaper than a $6,000 421 motor they were trying to sell him, on top of the $3,800 he already paid. And then who knows what the labor was of that motor they were going to charge, and whether or not he was going to get all the rest of his stuff back. So with that being said, the moral of the story is make sure you do the research on the companies that you're going to use to put stuff together. Now, I'm not promoting myself here because I'm not an open company to build stuff for people. I do this as more of like a word of mouth, or, you know, somebody's friend's friend was like, hey, we heard you were good at this. Would you mind taking it on? If it's worth the money for me, I'll do it. Most of the time, I only do my own stuff. Some of you guys see my stuff on Marketplace and whatnot, and I do my own little bit of like buying and selling and parting out. But I normally don't do that like open for the public. So I'm not trying to promote myself here. Keep that in mind. This just happened to be a friend of a friend who was a really nice guy, and I felt really bad and was like, I'll do that for you. So with that being said, do your research on your companies. Make sure you're giving your money to a reputable company. There's just certain things that cross the line where it's just like, dude, what the hell are you doing with people's money? The owner of the company then still had the audacity to be like, wasn't my fault, was my lackey's fault, even though it's his LLC, it's his name on the building, everything else. You're responsible for that person's machine at that point. Like, if this thing goes and blows up when it's done, I'm responsible for that. I'm not gonna be like, well, Cameron West was here and distracted me for 5 minutes and, you know, I gave him a blown up bike. No, man, like, it is what it is. I got to eat that. And this owner was not even willing to take accountability for his actions, which tells me a lot about the type of person and the type of company that it is. So with that being said, do your research, guys. Let's get back to the build. All right, now that we got that story out of the way, we can get back to making this thing ripper status. Really love the kit they give you. I really love the way the porting looks on these cylinders already. The drag style ports, they also give you 3 exhaust ports, which is a big bonus in Banshee world, and then an extra set of transfer ports, and I believe they do open up that boost on the top a little bit. Yeah, I really dig that. It really looks good, and I really think that this thing's gonna scream when it's done. And it looks like the type of porting where you'll still have some low end grunt too, and you won't lose it all to your top end. I gotta give it up to the manufacturer of these cylinders. They did a great job. I believe it's CPI. BP Racing's just a distributor. They kind of just sell it as a secondhand company, but CPI, they're the ones that do the actual cylinder casting, and they are here in America. So these cylinders are made in America, which is awesome to me. Keep it in the hometown, guys, right? Keep it in the hometown. So what I'm gonna be doing here is just installing the top end basically and finishing up the bottom end. I'm gonna have to check ring gap. I'm gonna have to go ahead and check the squish band on this because this is a fresh cylinder head. Fresh gasket kit. They give you 2 base gaskets, one thicker, one thinner, and then you get to check the squish. So I'm gonna work on doing that here, and I'll show you guys some really cool clips putting this thing together. They did also give you a titanium stud kit, so I have to go through and change some of these studs, which can be a pain in the butt. But all in all, I am excited to see how this baby rips. All right, guys, so as you can see, I got these cylinders and the head basically all torqued to spec and on this engine. So basically with ring gap, it's really simple. Wiseco gives you this cool little sheet and they say, you know, it's 4/1000ths of an inch ring gap over 1 inch of bore. So this is about a 2.5197 inch bore. So about 10/1000ths ring gap. You get a set of feeler gauges. I'll show you guys some close-ups. And then you stick the feeler gauge in between the ring. You have to put the ring in the cylinder that it's being used. Okay, don't mix match them. Put it in the cylinder that's going to be used. Measure your ring gap in that cylinder for both rings. The Banshee happens to have 2 rings per cylinder. And these are very crucial things for a 2-stroke. Ring gap especially because that's your compression. And then also, if you have too much compression, you can detonate. And if you have too big of a ring gap, you can lose compression. But if you have too tight of a ring gap, you can actually either detonate or the rings can butt inside the cylinder underneath. Basically, when the cylinder starts to get up to temp, the rings can actually butt up and either snap the ring, seize inside the bore. You know, they can do all kinds of stupid, funky things. So ring gap's very important. Then we move on to the squish band, which is the top of the piston, the gap in between the very top of the piston at top dead center and the clearance in between the outer ring of that and the top of the cylinder head. So we take a piece of solder, so we stick it in the corner there, and then we turn the engine over till the piston comes all the way up. Now, normally what I do for this is I'll measure my head gasket, or a lot of manufacturers tell you what the thickness of the head gasket is crushed. So you won't put the head gasket on and torque it down. You can put all your base gaskets in, torque the cylinder down, and then you put your head on with no gasket, and then you just kind of like snug that up, and then you measure the thickness of a piece of solder. I like to use 50/50 because it's very flexible and it won't hurt anything. Aluminum TIG rod will also work. So you measure that thickness. Ours wound up being, I came up with a final clearance of about 48 thousandths squish band thickness. For a stock-ish Banshee motor, stock bore, stock stroke, you would want in the neighborhood of 45 to 55 thousandths. You don't have to take my recommendation for it. Every builder's got their own specs. This seems to work good for me. I read it in a book somewhere. It was really good. Online, the guys say similar. Different bore, different stroke. Obviously, you're going to have a different squish band thickness. But that's what we have for this one. Should work great on pump gas. It's not going to be too much compression. But yeah, so let me finish tossing the rest of this together, and then we will get it in the quad, and we'll get a rip going, guys. All right, guys, so I did have the engine put together. I came out this morning to the shop to finish it up, and apparently the pistons were very gently hitting the head. Now, they didn't seem to be doing that yesterday, so I decided to take a further look at that. We did get the squish set, but for some reason, you know, the piston doesn't really stick out. I mean, it's like the very, very slightest bit, which is okay normally, especially when you set your squish properly. So I figured out what was happening. I'm an honest YouTuber. Doesn't matter if I'm working with companies. I feel it is extremely important to my following to give you guys 100% honest feedback on anything that I'm building here in the shop. I'm not a perfect person or anything like that. I'm not a perfect builder. I do want to give you guys the most honest information that I can bring to the table, because if you guys go out and purchase this kit and you go and blow it up, I don't want that on my conscience that people are wasting their money. I want to know in my heart that I did the best I could for my audience to pick a kit. Now, what I will say is you can get just the CUB 350 with just cylinders and pistons and throw that on a stock bottom end and put your factory head on and be good. Let me show you guys exactly what was going on here. So basically, this head came with BP, and I'm not downing them because I don't think they make this stuff. I think they just secondhand sell it. But basically the domes in this cylinder head, which it looks to be a Chinese knockoff kinda. I don't want to say that, but there's no Yamaha logos or anything like that on it. So the dome is actually smaller. Like the circumference of the dome is actually smaller than a factory Yamaha head, and I will show some close-ups here, but I actually took my caliper and measured the diameter of both this head that came with the kit and the factory Yamaha head, which I will show the factory Yamaha logo, and you can see there is a good bit difference in the diameter. I did go ahead and measure the head gasket, which does seem to fit the factory Yamaha head perfectly. And on the aftermarket Chinese head, you can see that the head gasket actually, there's a big lip on the inside of the head gasket here. I'll show you guys a quick close-up of this. But basically, what you're looking at is some overlap. The cylinder head actually comes in a little bit. And then I also showed some close-ups of the piston touching the inside of the dome. And basically, one of the pistons was nicking the inside by like maybe 5-6 thousandths of an inch. And I'm not happy with that. You cannot run that. You will blow this thing up. You will be detonating on the outer rings and you will fry the outer edge of the piston. So I highly recommend not running this type of cylinder head. I already put the Yamaha on with this already torqued down head gasket, which I'm gonna toss in the trash. And then it did clear perfect. Our squish band was still 50 thousandths in the 48 to 50 thousandths range, which is good for this motor. Basically, we'll use the factory Yamaha head. And then the other thing that I wasn't extremely happy about, the original kit that was on this motor, it was a niche kit. Cylinders, niche pistons, and a niche crank. So I used a stock stroke crank for this, 110 millimeter rod, and the pistons were coming out of the top of the head a little bit. I've seen this before, but I couldn't figure out exactly what the issue was here. So basically I used an extra base layer gasket, which brought that up and then got our squish where we wanted it. And that's common. I've seen that done before. There's racers out there that do that, especially if you don't have enough thickness or if you've had too much milled off the top of the cylinder head. I went through and measured the pistons, the wrist pin heights, the cylinder heights. Everything looked to be pretty identical. The only difference was the CUB 350 cylinder height versus the niche cylinder height was slightly off. And I mean, you know, like 20 thousandths slightly, not enough to cause the issue that I was seeing. So If you have any experience with this kit, feel free to drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. This is just how I tackled the situation. The bike will still run great in optimal condition. And I don't see any issues with doing it how we're doing it. So let's go ahead and get this clutch basket and clutch side assembly done. We'll get the electrical on, and then we'll get this motor in the bike and get her running. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this cylinder head torqued back down. And we're gonna check our final squish and doubly make sure that this thing's going to be okay. Also, this kit did come with the titanium hardware. Not sure how much I like it. When I was building my Banshee 521, I actually did break one of the studs. I'm not saying that it's not a good kit, the titanium kit, because you can get the studs and everything separate, but I don't know if I would recommend using them. I've had no issues with your standard mild steel, and you're not really saving a whole lot of weight by going to the titanium, at least not with some studs. You know, I would prefer a very high quality stud. Titanium's good for weight savings. I have not really done anything with strength testing on it, so I can't recommend it to you guys as far as strength goes. And like I said, I broke one on the Banshee just torquing it down to its torque setting, so don't know if they're that good or not. And I don't know how pricey they were. I didn't look online to see, but I don't think they're going to be very cheap. Just giving her a quick torque sequence. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Alright, now I want to double check this squish real fast now. Yeah, see, I got no issues with that hitting at all now. Nothing at all. Compression feels amazing. Alright, so like I said earlier, I use a 50-50 solder. Chop the end off, give her a little 90-degree bend there, kind of match the cylinder width, and then I'll stick her in there against the edge of the cylinder. And I kind of go back a few times. I like to make sure it's fully flattened out. Okay. And then we'll give her a quick measure. And you can see on the dot, 50 thousandths. That's a good squish. That method works really good. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm gonna go ahead and finish buttoning this up, and then we will get her into the quad. Time lapse from here, guys. Alright guys, so before we get started putting the last finishing touches on this engine, which is the stator and the flywheel, unfortunately I wanted to let you guys know we have to use a Chinese stator and flywheel because that's all we have available for this. The company that basically was working with the owner of this Banshee, I'll say it like that, they were supposed to get a new flywheel, and I don't remember if a stator was on that list or not. I don't think it was, but apparently they worked out some sort of deal where he gets a new stator and flywheel, but they're on back order, so they're not available to run yet. I will say this, as long as it produces spark, they typically work okay. The one thing I did notice in comparison video, which I did a few years ago on Yamaha Banshees, was that the $30 stator and flywheel setup you can get on eBay, the actual tab, the timing tab on the flywheel itself is like 2 or 3 degrees offset. So I don't recommend running that. If you can buy OEM, obviously that is without a doubt the best stuff you can use for Yamaha Banshees. Stay away from the Chinese stuff on this one. But for now, we're gonna use it just to get it running and riding, try and dial it in. I'm gonna set the timing at +4. That's the way I always set my Banshee timing up for motors like this, unless I'm doing something like the 521 drag cub where it's like trying to get the most power out of it, which that didn't like any more than 5 degrees anyways. So, and then we get into other types of fuels and stuff. Not for this conversation. If you guys wanna know more about that, check out my max performance 2-stroke video. But outside of that, let's go ahead and get this back in the Banshee frame so we can get this thing out there hauling ass and tearing grass. This is the flywheel. This was supposed to be brand new, and as you can tell, there's tons of pitting, and there's no Yamaha or part number, no Yamaha logo or part number along the outside edge of this, which is a big indicator, and this gold color. OEM stators are not this color. All right, guys, now that we got the engine completely assembled, it's time to start dropping this sucker into the frame. I did take the liberty of jetting the carburetors. They are Kian 32mm knockoff Chinese carbs. They'll work okay for this build. We're doing a 165 main and a 45 pilot to make sure it's rich enough for the first start, the break-in, and then once we get this thing out there riding, if it doesn't like the amount of fuel we're giving it, we'll dial it back and put some smaller jets in there. But we should be pretty close with the 165s, and it's always better to be on the rich side of things anyways. And now that we got the engine and the carburetors out of the way, we can talk about the exhaust. We are going to be upgrading the exhaust to a Toomey T6 style exhaust, which both me and the owner of this Banshee agreed is the best sounding and will give not the best power curve, but will give one of the best power curves that you can get for a Yamaha Banshee with a stock stroke and stock bore. So with all of that out of the way, let me go ahead and get this installed and let's get this thing out there ripping, guys. Remember, guys, always make sure to lift with your back. Alright guys, now we are ready for our first fire. We've got everything done, everything fresh, full of fluids, and we're ready to give this thing the first kicks and see if she comes to life. All right, take two. So the bike wouldn't fire. I could smell a lot of fuel. I decided to change out the stator and flywheel for OEM. I checked spark. It didn't have any spark at all. So I happen to have a spare set laying on the shelf in the back. Swap that out real quick. Put it back to +4 timing. Now we're going to go ahead and give this sucker another shot. Not bad for a first start, but I can hear that it's only running on one of the two cylinders, and I see the right cylinder isn't firing off right. So I'm going to take a few minutes, try and figure that out real fast, and I'll let you know what I come up with. This is actually pretty funny. I had a thought when I started the Banshee up. I thought I saw like two little pieces of insulation or something pop out of the exhaust. Well, I took the silencer off quick and take a look. It is exactly what I thought it was going to be. So as you can see, there is a bird's nest in there. I have to get a coat hanger and dig this out. These were a used set of pipes. Not a big deal. And this is what's going to happen when you get used. There's just really nothing you can do about this. Just check things over when you're buying them. That is my best advice to you. Let's go ahead and get this cleaned out and get it back on the Banshee. I honestly can't even make this up. I can feel it. How packed it is inside that exhaust. Look at all of it coming out. Piles of it. My God. There's like a whole little home. Let's see if we can push some of it out by starting it up. There we go. That looks a little better, doesn't it? Now I bet this sucker runs. So let's take a look at the final damage, Heather. That's some of it. There's still some in here that I gotta dig out. Got itself in between the, there we go. There's some, and then there's also, oh look, there's some more. There's some more. Oh, look, there's a whole bunch more. So there was like a whole family of mice living in that exhaust. Oh, yeah. It just goes to show you, watch what you buy off of the internet. All right, before we take this thing for a rip, we got to do a couple of heat cycles. Generally speaking, when I do a break-in for any machine of the newer age that we're in, the bores, in my opinion, just the honing just isn't as deep as they once were. So typically what I do is 2 full heat cycles. I get the bike fully up to temperature. There is a temp gauge on the lower hose on this. I get it fully up to temp, let it warm up, shut it down, let it fully cool, do this one more time, all the way up to temp, all the way down, and then I go rip on it. I want to seat the rings in the bore as fast as I can, because like I said, the bore honing just isn't as deep groove as it used to be years ago, especially when it comes to Nickel plating like this cylinder kit is.
to adjust them. There's no screws in the Chinese carb. So I either have to set it with the cables or set it with the thumb. But it seems to idle pretty good once it gets a little temperature in it, so maybe I'll just leave it alone, because you should be warming up with a choke.
All right, we've been through 2 heat cycles on this bad mamma jamma. We're gonna take her out for a quick little ripper. See what she's got. I'll do a couple little putts around the yard, get some more temp in her since I let her cool all the way back down. And then we'll give her some hammer pulls, some full throttles for ya. Give her some whiskeys, brap, brap. Banshee, stock-ish, I should say. Stock wheelbase. Sounds good though. I love the sound of the Toome exhaust. Can't ever get enough of that. She's gonna get it. Oh, it sounds so crispy. Oh yeah, baby. She's quick. Woo! Love my Banshees, baby. Needs a little low-end tuning yet. Might need a smaller pilot or the needle drop down a clip. Because I can tell it's really fat down in the low end yet. It takes a good half throttle for it to pick up and go. It's not as crispy in the mid-range. CUB 350. Let's do a couple hole shots. She's just reaching 150 degrees now. I'll set the camera up on a tripod. That way we can do a couple hole shots. I'll let this get up in temp just a little bit more. Yeah, we're almost there. I dig it.
Alpha CUB 350, baby.
Alright, let's do a hole shot.
fourth gear, baby. She just spins all the way. Oh man. Definitely gonna have to play with that needle a little bit. Woo! A bunch of... holding good, 160 area, I like it. It's a nice, cool 55, 60 degree day out. She got traction on that last one there, she fit in third. Don't forget, we still have the really rich jetting in this yet too. I did not lean it out at all. We're on a 160 main and a 45 pilot. So she's super rich yet. The tires do grip pretty good. All right, one more. Power clutching, baby. I didn't let off the throttle on that one. I power clutched it. Woo! Amazingly enough, it does have some torque. Baby, let's get it. All right, I've had my fun. I don't want to beat on this guy's Banshee too hard after I just built it for him. I'll let him beat on it. I like it though, it runs great. All right, my review on the Alpha Cub 350. I think it's a great kit. Around 180, that's about where we want to be. I'm happy with that. The only downfalls that I would highly recommend for you guys is use cap nuts on the studs if you do decide to buy one of these kits, and use an OEM head, because like I said, the OEM head had a bigger circumference dome, as I showed you guys earlier in the clips. But outside of that, I had to use an extra base gasket to get a better squish,
And I highly recommend the kit. If I was to do it again, I'd probably just buy the cylinders, pistons, use an OEM head, and cap nuts and copper washers. And that'd be it, guys. So if you like the content, give me a like, share, subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see next. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out. He doesn't know I'm sneaking footage of him right now. Yeah. Go ahead, go down. Oh, yeah, go around the back of the shop. I think he likes it, Mikey. I hear him coming. Yeah, come on.